Imagine a fortress. Massive, towering walls built over 60 years, reinforced by generations of wealth, deeply entrenched ideology, and millions of loyal foot soldiers. For decades, anyone who tried to storm this fortress was crushed. In Tamil Nadu politics, that fortress was the DMK and AIADMK duopoly. For over half a century, it was an undisputed law of Indian politics. You either belonged to one camp or the other. Third fronts? They were political suicide. And then came 2026. The fortress didn't just fall. It evaporated. A deep, resonant bass note hits, followed by a steady, driving, sophisticated electronic beat. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are dissecting one of the most fascinating, mind-bending political disruptions in modern democratic history. Actor Vijay and his party, the Tamilaga Vettri Kazhagam, or TVK, and their historic 2026 victory.
If you look at this through the lens of traditional political science, Vijay's campaign makes absolutely no sense. He broke every rule in the playbook. He barely held press conferences. He didn't exhaustively tour every single constituency. His family was conspicuously absent from his biggest political moments, sparking wild rumors of divorce. He was hit with a devastating controversy during the Karur rally tragedy. By all conventional metrics, his campaign should have imploded. Yet, he won. And he didn't just win, he rewired the entire political ecosystem. To understand why, we have to throw out the old playbook. Because Vijay's victory wasn't a political campaign. It was a masterpiece of psychology, network theory, algorithmic economics, and generational rebellion. Let's break down the science of the ultimate Black Swan event. The author Nassim Nicholas Taleb coined the term Black Swan to describe an event that is highly improbable, carries massive consequences, and is only truly understood in hindsight. In 2025, if you told a veteran Tamil Nadu political analyst that the duopoly would be shattered by a man who rarely spoke to the press, they would have laughed you out of the room.
But systems that look incredibly stable on the outside are often rotting on the inside. Beneath the surface of Tamil Nadu's political stability was a boiling reservoir of voter fatigue. Decades of anti-incumbency, cynicism, and a desperate desire for novelty had created a dry forest. All it needed was a spark. But why was Vijay that spark? To answer that, we have to talk about a concept in psychology called parasocial relationships. Think about how traditional politicians build trust. They kiss babies, they cut ribbons, they give fiery speeches for years to convince you they care. Vijay didn't have to do any of that. Why? Because he had been running a subconscious political campaign for 30 years. For 3 decades, on thousands of cinema screens, millions of people watched Vijay play the same archetype: the protector of the weak, the relentless fighter against corruption, the man who sacrifices himself for justice. In psychology, there is a phenomenon known as narrative transfer. The human brain is incredibly susceptible to stories. When we watch a narrative play out repeatedly, we begin to transfer the emotional weight of that fiction into our real-world reality. The subconscious logic of the voter wasn't, what are Vijay's fiscal policies? The logic was, if he fought injustice for us on screen, he will fight it for us in reality.
It's like a psychological bank account. For 30 years, Vijay was making emotional deposits. In 2026, he simply cashed the check. He wasn't a new politician asking for a chance. He was an old friend stepping up to the plate. But emotional connection alone doesn't win elections. You need a distribution network. And this is where the 2026 election completely inverted traditional Indian household dynamics. Historically, voting in India has often been top-down. The patriarch or the elders of the family decide the political allegiance, and the rest of the household follows. But TVK flipped the script. They executed a bottom-up Trojan horse strategy. They didn't knock on the front door. They came in through the children's smartphones. School and college students became the ultimate political operatives. They weren't just sharing memes, they were evangelists at the dinner table. They relentlessly pressured their parents. And here's the beautiful, unspoken truth about human nature. Parents are often persuaded not by rigid policy arguments, but by the raw, unjaded conviction of their children. The youth of Tamil Nadu dragged the older generation across the finish line. And speaking of smartphones, we have to talk about the invisible hand that guided this election: the attention economy and algorithmic amplification.
During the campaign, something bizarre happened. Suddenly, food reviewers, travel vloggers, couple channels, and lifestyle influencers who had never spoken about politics were suddenly posting pro-Vijay content. Traditional analysts cried foul. They assumed TVK had a massive, secret slush fund paying off all these creators. But the reality is much more fascinating and much cheaper. It was the algorithm. Platforms like YouTube, Instagram, and X don't care about politics. They care about engagement. And in 2026, Vijay was the ultimate engagement bait. If a food vlogger posted a video about a restaurant, they got 10,000 views. If they posted a video about that same restaurant, but wore a TVK shirt and mentioned Vijay, the algorithm caught the fan engagement. The comments exploded, the watch time spiked, and the video got 1 million views. It was a modern-day gold rush. Creators weren't being paid by the party, they were being paid by the platforms. It created a self-reinforcing amplification loop. Influencers posted Vijay content for the clicks, the algorithm pushed it to neutral voters. Those voters perceived a massive, unstoppable momentum, what sociologists call social proof, and they joined the herd. The medium literally became the message. The music turned slightly darker, more serious. Host: but what happens when the hero's armor cracks? Every Black Swan event faces a stress test. For Vijay, it was twofold: the devastating Karur rally tragedy and the glaring, highly publicized absence of his family, specifically his wife, from his biggest political moments, including his oath-taking ceremony. In any normal campaign, these are kill shots. The opposition pounced. They framed the Karur tragedy as proof of his administrative incompetence and lack of empathy. They framed his family's absence and the swirling divorce rumors as proof of a broken personal life. How can he govern a state, they asked, if he can't manage a rally or his own household? Yet the voters didn't blink. Why? Because of a psychological shield called motivated reasoning, fueled by that deep parasocial bond we talked about earlier. When people have a deeply entrenched emotional belief, like viewing someone as a savior, their brains will actively reject information that threatens that belief. This is called hero immunity. Supporters didn't ignore the Karur tragedy. They simply separated Vijay the man from the operational failure of the event. They rationalized it. And as for his personal life, modern voters are shifting. They are increasingly practicing functional separation. They looked at the divorce speculation and collectively decided that is his private life. We are hiring him to clean up the state, not to be a model husband. They wanted a disruptor, and they were willing to forgive the messiness that came with him. And Vijay amplified this immunity through a masterstroke of counterintuitive PR, the scarcity principle. While the DMK, AIADMK, and NTK leaders were shouting into every microphone they could find, Vijay stayed quiet. He didn't over-explain. He didn't do hostile press interviews. By remaining silent and tightly controlling his image, he created a presidential mystique. Think of it like a luxury brand. An Apple product launch doesn't involve the CEO shouting on a street corner. It's controlled, scarce, and highly anticipated. By speaking rarely, every word Vijay said became an event. Meanwhile, the old guard was fighting a war that had already ended. The DMK relied on their traditional formula: incumbency, alliances, and legacy data. They completely missed the emotional and digital tectonic shift happening beneath their feet. The AIADMK offered no compelling narrative of renewal. And the NTK, the Tamilaga catchy, who had cornered the angry youth vote for years, suddenly found themselves outmatched.
They had the ideological intensity, but Vijay had the mainstream emotional gravity. He effectively swallowed their base whole. Which leads us to the final piece of the puzzle. The reason the polls and the pundits got it so wrong. Preference falsification. Imagine you are a middle-aged voter in a neighborhood dominated by DMK or AIADMK loyalists. A pollster knocks on your door. Are you going to publicly declare you're voting for the actor's new party and risk an argument with your neighbors? No. You nod, you say you're voting for the incumbent, and you close the door. But in the absolute privacy of the voting booth, you pull the lever for change. Millions of silent voters did exactly this. They masked their true intentions, hiding the massive, swelling wave until the very moment it crashed onto the shore. The Malcolm Gladwell talks about the tipping point, that magic moment when an idea, trend, or social behavior crosses a threshold, tips, and spreads like wildfire. That is the true story of the 2026 Tamil Nadu election. If we were to write a mathematical formula for this victory, it would look like this. 30 years of parasocial trust multiplied by youth influence, amplified by algorithmic network effects, and catalyzed by deep voter fatigue. Vijay didn't just win an election in a few months. He converted 3 decades of emotional devotion into a political revolution. He proved that in the digital age, legitimacy doesn't just come from political dynasties or decades in parliament. It comes from owning the narrative, capturing the attention economy, and understanding the deep, unspoken heartbeat of the voter.
The 60-year fortress has fallen, and the blueprint of Indian politics will never be the same again. Thanks for listening. If you want to understand the hidden forces shaping our world, make sure you subscribe. Until next time, look past the headlines and watch the underlying systems.